I want to bring in criminologist Casey Jordan and criminal defense attorney R.J. Manuelian. And Casey, I'll start with you because you heard Ed there talking about the fact that they are saying, listen, you were more upset today, crying harder today than you were the day you shot Botham Jean, you say accidentally. Do you think that that's effective?
I do. And I think that, playing that 911 phone call earlier today really did some damage to her, because even though she is incredibly composed on the stand, far more articulate than I actually anticipated, and breaking down crying was, definitely an appeal to the jury. I don't think they're going to get the 911 phone call out of their minds, because that's where she was 100% concerned about herself and not the victim of the shooting. So I think the jury's biggest challenge right now is kind of weighing what they see in front of them on the stand, and she appears to be very well prepared versus the visibly and audibly upset cop who made that 911 phone call. And I think they're more likely to believe the 911 phone call is the real police officer.
And here's more of what she said on the stand. Listen.
When you shot at Mr. Jean, you knew you were using deadly force against him.
Yes.
You know what a bullet can do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And when you shot at him twice, you intended to kill him.
Yes, sir.
RJ, I mean, as a defense attorney, would you be cringing if you heard your client say that?
No, not really. That's par for the course. I would expect that, and I would expect that the lawyers went over that with Ms. Guyger. Look, they're second-guessing her actions and her motives. The jury has to look at it from a subjective point of view, Guyger's point of view. They have to listen to her and believe her, and if they do believe her state of mind, then despite the fact that Guyger went beyond the protocol of her training, in other words, despite the fact that she didn't de-escalate the situation, she could still be found not guilty if they believe that she truly believed that the threat was imminent, and that's going to be based on the totality of the evidence. Walking into the wrong apartment door, the door being ajar. She just came off of a 13-and-a-half-hour long shift, so she was on autopilot at the time. She came off the wrong floor. She was on the 4th level. Everything looks the same. Even the prosecution's investigator said he got caught up and he got lost. So the jury's going to look at the totality of everything before they make that decision, not just on her callousness of her behavior after the fact.
Because, Casey, we keep pounding this over and over again, but it's a murder charge. That has to show intent. How difficult do you think that will be to prove?
I actually think that this may be a case where they have overcharged. Now, the grand jury returned that indictment for murder, but based on what she's saying, it really does seem like a more appropriate charge would have been negligent manslaughter, negligent homicide. Should she have known better? And what RJ said is really important, because the jury has to put themselves in the shoes of Amber Guyger. But the problem is she is a highly trained police officer. And you have to ask yourself, can the average civilian, jury of your peers understand what it's like to be a police officer who is trained to reach for a gun and has a gun on her at that time? It really just depends, I think, on whether the jury relates more to the victim or whether or not they relate to this police officer. And relating to a cop is a really hard thing. If you've never been to the academy and don't understand how that training is instilled in somebody, I think that is her best defense, that she's a cop who reacted as a cop would do. But they may not be able to put themselves in her shoes.
RJ, do you think that she was effective there on the stand? Did she seem sympathetic to the jurors to the point where they will be able to see her in the light that Casey's talking about?
I personally think that she was very sympathetic. I think that her attorneys humanized her, but I agree that the jury demographic is very important. You have 5 African-American, you have 5 Hispanic and Asian, 2 African-American and 2 white alternate jurors. So the jury makeup is everything in this case. If they can associate themselves more with Mr. Jean, then they may be more prone to vote guilty. If they could empathize with Guyger and they empathize with her training and what she went through and everything that happened on September 6th with her long day, they may actually vote not guilty. But I think, in my opinion, this is going to be a hung jury. It's too close to call. It's very hard to discern. And there was a series of unfortunate events that happened. And based on that, I think they're not going to be able to reach a conclusion in this case.
And, the Texas Ranger, many people pointing to the significant testimony that the jury will never hear, that he did not think that she committed a crime. Now, the jury will not hear that because the judge said, listen, That's your opinion, obviously, but still significant to you, Casey?
I do think that's important. Listen, everyone, when this came out, was really incredulous about the facts of the case. And I think that it may have been overarching to go for murder, because everyone was like, she must have known this guy. This must have been a vendetta. How could you not know that it was the wrong apartment? But I have to tell you, she's been very effective on the stand. I'm not going to use the word coached, but she's been guided very well by her defense attorneys. She is looking at the jury. She is trying to get them to look at her. She wants the sympathy of basically arguing, I walked into the wrong apartment by mistake. And everything that came from that is from the mistake. There was no intent to kill anybody. And yet we have to remember that all officers, when they shoot their guns, they must shoot to kill. That is part of their training. So it's a really difficult conundrum for this jury. And I agree with R.J. We may end up with a hung jury, because I don't know that they're going to want to go for murder. I think they would rather have the option of negligent manslaughter in this case.
Let's listen to more of Amber Guyger's testimony, this specifically about CPR and Botham Jean. Listen.
You also indicated that you've never done CPR before.
No, I have not.
But you were trained to do CPR in the academy, were you not?
We were trained. I've never done it on an actual person.
All right, so at least then, to the extent that you weren't suggesting that you didn't know how to properly perform CPR.
They taught us briefly in the academy.
You knew how to perform CPR properly, right?
I never done it on a person. I couldn't say
Ms. Guyger, were you trained to do CPR properly?
Yes, we were.
Okay, were you at those classes?
Yes, I was.
Were you paying attention during those classes?
Yes, I was.
Did you properly perform CPR on Mr. Jean?
No, I did not.
And you could have, right?
I tried to do a little CPR.
Why would you try?
R.J., what do you make of that? I tried to do a little CPR. Why did she not use her radio rather than calling 911? They would have responded quicker.
I think the prosecution is trying to use callousness and bootstrap her callousness to the guilt, in my opinion. I mean, just very clear to me that the prosecution is nitpicking everything that Guyger didn't do. But again, when you're in this situation, you have tunnel vision. When your heart is elevated and you think that you're about to be killed, you see things differently. And that's what the defense attorneys need to hammer over and over again at the closing argument. Sure, it's easy for us to play Monday morning quarterback and look at this thing hindsight into 2020, but we got to put ourselves in the shoes of Guyger at the time that this happened.
Yeah, R.J. Manuelian, Casey Jordan, great to have you both. Thanks so much. Don't go far. We're back after this short break.